Welcome back to El Pida, a podcast that spreads hope and awareness about incarceration. I'm your host, Ariadne Brempu, and today's episode will cover how upbringing can contribute to incarceration. It will feature Jason Bostic, the Vice President of the Center of Justice Program at Columbia University. He grew up in an impoverished neighborhood and has experienced a lot of violence in his life. He's also seen firsthand how incarceration impacts people and had close encounters with it himself. Still, he made the decision to turn his life around and hopes to encourage the younger generations to do the same. So grab your headphones, settle in, and let's get into it. Starting with your childhood, what was your neighborhood like?
Um, I say my neighborhood was just like any other neighborhood when I was growing up. I had a lot of love for my neighborhood until I was exposed to a bunch of things. Uh, that was like the opposite side of the coin what I was introduced to. Uh, there was a lot of I lived in an unprivileged neighborhood with a lot of lack of resources. Uh, and then when I was young, my father was murdered. So I was introduced to gun violence at a very young age.
You mentioned the violence. What do you think the impact of that was, especially on younger individuals like yourself?
Um, I think it kind of caused me to form a bubble around myself. It caused me to question my environment. Like as a kid, I asked the question a lot, like, why me? And I think a lot of young individuals feel the same, but then they don't have the proper spaces for them to cope with that and cope with the feelings and the emotions they may have, especially with the stigma of therapy inside Black and Brown communities.
Being in an impoverished community, you mentioned how they were structured to keep the people inside. What did you mean by
So there's a study called the Yuri. It's by Yuri Bronfenbrenner. But it's called the ecological systems model. So in simpler terms, I could put it: an individual is first introduced to the closest things to them. So probably their immediate family, my immediate family. I had both parents, but then one parent was murdered. So that was one thing I was introduced to. And then it's the community that you're around. So in my community, I was surrounded by over policing, a lot of gun violence, gangs. But then when I looked at it as a deeper level, me being from housing development or projects, there's convenience stores that surround my neighborhood, and I always want. After I learned it, I'm like, who is this convenient to? Is this convenient to us that we could walk to the corner and get something, or is it convenient to keep us from accessing other stores where there's probably healthier food options or and other things? So after that, I said, oh, that's why it's liquor stores because there's 6 liquor stores that surround my housing development. So why is that? So for people that already don't know how to cope or have the stigma on therapy, they're using liquor and other things as displacement to cope with their feelings. So it's causing a lot of people to stay stagnant in their environment instead of exploring elsewhere. And I realized that once I became a Columbia student, that there's no convenience stores next to Columbia. So there's no liquor stores close to Columbia. It's like 4 blocks away, 5 blocks away. But in my community, it was so easily accessible. So I realized that this stuff is designed this way to keep people in their environment. They're gonna give you everything you need so you don't leave this 4 block radius.
that? And the role that the police had in your community, was it helpful? Was it not?
Um, I think there was barriers and a disconnect between the police and the people in the community because because of the old policing, because of stop and frisk, because of all these things, the approaches and tactics that police officers use to people in the community, uh, a lot of the people in the community didn't like police officers, and then a lot of police officers don't come from the same communities in which the neighborhoods they're policing. So they don't know the people in the community. They only going based on the documents. They only going based on what they're told. So they come in with a different approach, and which cause a disconnect and a lot of community disengagement between the people inside of the community.
Along with that disconnect, do you think there was a lot of fear between the two groups?
There was definitely a lot of fear, and I didn't know that growing up, but I think it was a lot of fear because one, seeing a lot of things going on in the community, like the death of George Floyd, the death of Trayvon Martin, Sandra Bland. Growing up and seeing that as a kid, like you become in fear of your own life. Like, this could have been me, or Eric Gardner on the corner selling cigarettes. Yo, I know somebody who do that. This could have been them. So it's a fear of your life. But then as I grew older and I really had conversations with people who are police officers, I realized that a bunch of police officers just want to go home too. They want to make it home safe to their family. So they may be hyper vigilant, just like someone who's hyper vigilant in their community of all the things going in their community. So I think both people just want to make it home, and then is they both stuck in a situation in a hard place.
Did you have any personal experiences with stop and frisk?
Definitely, I was a victim of stop and frisk multiple times. Camera on, camera off. There's been multiple times like police officers followed me into my building, cut the camera off, stopped and frisked me, pulled my shirt up, everything. Uh, and I was a victim of stop and frisk when I was 12 years old, like coming from the basketball court. I got in the cab on my way home. I was sweaty, had a basketball in my hand, no pockets, no nothing. And the police pulled me over in the cab. I'm thinking nothing of it. I'm thinking they're pulling the cab driver over because he may have did something. But then they pulling me out the car, telling me, yo, where you going? You match a description. And it's like, bro, I'm 12. Like, I don't even know what to say to that. And they're like, why are you wet? And I'm like, I play basketball. And I got a basketball in my hand. Then a few minutes later, they asked me, oh, where you coming from? Like, they were trying to trick me to say something or admit to a crime that I didn't do. So experience that at a young age, it definitely make you think of police officers in a different way or a different light growing up.
Growing up in a lot of these conditions, were there any role models that you could have looked up to?
There wasn't too many role models I could look up to. I think one role model I had was my father, and he died when I was 9 years old. So I was really experiencing life without a male figure that I that I trust and really looked up to growing up. So I didn't have too many role models. I was really figuring it out by myself.
How did that impact your hope for what your future would look like?
I realized that I was using a bunch of different things as a coping mechanism, but I didn't know at the time. So I got into basketball. I was playing basketball. I got really good at it. And then it was a moment in time where I stopped playing basketball and all these emotions from my childhood was coming back. And I was like, yo, my father died 10 years ago. Like, why am I feeling all this now? Um, and it's because I was using this sport as a coping mechanism to run away from all the things I was feeling, to run away from trauma, my problems. And once I stopped, I was like, I was washed over with a wave of emotions that I didn't know where it was coming from until I got a form of therapy to be like, oh, wow, I was using this as a coping mechanism.
And after you mentioned your father was murdered, after that experience, how did your view on your neighborhood kind of change?
Um, I formed kind of like a hatred to my community. The community, I felt betrayed. Like the community that I love, that I was born at, that I love to be like, yo, I'm from here. That same community was a community that took my father away from me. And sad to say it, but a teacher that I had, her son was one of the people that killed my father. So it was like, dang, I felt betrayed from multiple different angles. So growing up, losing my dad, I definitely felt the betrayal of my neighborhood, especially like from a young person looking at it from a certain lens. I was like, yo,
Did a lot of people feel the way you did?
um, maybe I could say maybe they felt the same way I did. I think uh most of the time people don't talk about how they really feel coming from certain communities. It's just a bunch of emotions that they bottle up inside. So then when they start doing different things, that's really them venting in probably negative ways. And people don't really know because they never had the outlet to actually express how they feel.
And you also saw a lot of people become incarcerated, right?
Yes.
What were some of the common ways that they were incarcerated?
So I think people was incarcerated for a whole bunch of different things. And I think the carceral system is used as a tool or engine to power this country. It costs $500,000 to hold a person on Rikers Island. So the government is benefiting and the state is benefiting from holding people in prison. So I think a lot of things is criminalized in my community more than in other communities. I think I think little things as someone being in a building lobby, they say that's trespassing. People get arrested for that. People, hanging out by the store, and it's look like a lot of people in the store. They say that's loitering, but this is the store that they grew up on. They know the people that work there. They just hanging out, and all four black men being in the car. The cops pulling over the car. Where you going? Where you heading? When they made cars with four doors. So I think a lot of people suffer from that in my community. I think a lot of people were victims to the system that was designed to keep them incarcerated. And black and brown people are dominate the people that's incarcerated right now. So I think it definitely start from a young age. As the school, the prison pipeline, you know, them suspending kids too often when they really need help, when they really need therapy, when they really need guidance. And 60% of people that drop out of high school that's black end up in prison. So we need to look at these facts and look at these stats. And it's just not these people making bad decisions. Because a lot of teens all over, no matter the race, make mistakes and make bad decisions. But which ones are being criminalized more for doing?
So, what are some other things you think could have a more positive outcome for these people?
I think a lot of resources, a lot of programming that have mentors, people with the same lived experience. So like a credible messenger. Uh, I think hubs where people could go when they don't have no place to go, to give people a place to study, to hang out, and not be like judged or seen as a threat for doing it. And I think someone to just guide people on how to get documentation. I think that's overlooked a lot in our society. Many communities, if people need an ID, their parents take them to go get an ID from the DMV. But there's a lot of kids who parents may be substance misusers. They could be people who parents that's working 2 to 3 jobs and don't have the time to take their kids to the DMV. So a lot of kids are walking around without an ID, and then that's another reason, excuse for cops to take you down to the precinct. Oh, I don't know who you is. I can't prove your identity. You John Doe. I gotta take you in. So I think places where people could have help to guide them on life would be helpful to communities all over.
Do you think maybe more support for parents in those communities would be helpful?
Definitely, I think parents get the short end of the stick a lot too, especially when they juggling a lot in impoverished communities. Parents need help. Parents can't do it themselves. We always say it takes a village to raise one child, but then when it's certain people from a certain demographic, from a certain zip code, it's like that saying go out the window. So I think we need to find ways to help parents and to make it easier because the children is the future. They're the next people running this country.
Can you explain a little bit about Project Restore Bedside?
So Project Restore Bed-Stuy was a pilot program that came from Justice Ambassadors, which is a program at Columbia Centers for Justice. So Justice Ambassadors is an 8-week educational seminar that gets government officials and marginalized youth from different communities all over New York City to work together to co-create policy. So the founder of Justice Ambassadors, Jarrell Daniels, who was formerly incarcerated, worked with his prosecutor to create Project Restore Bed-Stuy, the idea of it inside Justice Ambassadors. And then they began to pitch this program to different DAs. Eric Gonzalez, who is the DA Brooklyn, liked the idea and said that he'd back it. It got some funding from the mayor's office of criminal justice to start this 1-year pilot program to get 2 gangs simultaneously to get a whole bunch of holistic services and get paid for doing it. So the people got a mentor, a case manager, they got life skills sessions, which was the curriculum based at Columbia Center for Justice. Uh, they got an internship where they had to be at 10 hours out the week, and they got a healing restorative circle called Inside Circle, ran by a different organization from California, where all the people that run that program are formerly incarcerated. But this holistic approach allow people who usually get overlooked, usually feel like they don't have no opportunities to get opportunities for a full year. And then at the eighth month mark of the program, both sides, three and three, had a sit down and they was able to talk and realize that this beef that they had for decades wasn't really worth it. And they don't know where it started from. I was one of the individuals who sat down and we decided that we needed to be more progressive. And we started to have talks all over the city. And the program was for 30 people, 15 and 15 from each housing development, from each gang. And from that program, 10 people are now enrolled in college.
While you haven't been incarcerated yourself, what do you hear about the conditions within the prisons?
I think from a lot of friends that I have, family that's incarcerated, they say the conditions in prison is awful. Constantly being told when to wake up, when they could go to sleep, when they could go to lunch, when they could eat, when can they could go outside. They have to deal with that. Also dealing with having to wash the clothes that they wear inside the toilet. Um, then not to also talk about the things that carry on from the street inside the prison, where they place people in certain cells with people that they may be beefing with, and then they have to fight. They may be getting slashed inside the prison. And these are stories that they don't tell you about when they come home, right? Being institutionalized, being like this for years, and then have to come home and thrown back into society without much help. There's a lot of programs for certain people, but there's still a bunch of barriers, and not everybody get to access the opportunities. So there's people who got all this trauma from being incarcerated, and once they come home, they dealing with it by themselves. That's why a lot of people who come home from prison end up back in prison after 3 years of being out, or before 3 years of them being out.
And within the prisons, you mentioned that the things that were on the street come into them. How is that interaction between the inmates?
So, for instance, some people may be uh, in gangs in which they beefing with another gang, and then they go inside prison, and then they have to do the same thing inside prison. So now it's even only worse because when you outside, you may see people every once in a while, or in prison, you're surrounded by these people all the time. So now you gotta fight for your life all the time while in prison. So it's just a cycle that continues to keep happening.
What role do the guards play when they see this violence happening within the prisons?
Uh, the guards stop it, but the guards also treat the people like they're not human. So they may come in with bear spray. You know how powerful bear spray is? It's like pepper spray, but times 10. And they spraying humans with it. So they can't breathe, they can't talk. Then we got instances where like the dude Robert, who was murdered by COs in prison, getting beat up. But luckily one of the police officers or COs that was there, he had his camera on, so they was able to see them beating him, and then he wound up dying because of the fatal blows that he was taking. But things like this happen in prisons all over the nation. But a lot of times the story don't get out or they cover it up. So we gotta get to the bottom of it one way or another.
You mentioned how you've been arrested a couple of times. Can you talk about the emotional impact that that had on you?
Uh, yeah, being arrested definitely like they do a number on you. First of all, feeling how tight the police officers place the handcuffs on your hands. That's traumatic within itself. Being in the holding cell and being treated like it's like you got to ask permission to use the bathroom. Like that don't feel well. So, and a lot of times I've been arrested just for being in proximity of certain things. Like I remember one time someone was getting beat up by the police officers. I came and backed my camera out, and they arrested me for it. The police got close to my face. She pushed me, and the other police officers like tried to say like I was getting rough with her, and then they arrested me for it. I was placed in holding cell. Or another time they mistaken me for a different identity, took me to the precinct, made me take my shoestrings out my shoes, like all this stuff that it doesn't feel well, especially when you're not that type of person. So it definitely did a number on.
After these arrests, how, if at all, did you change your interactions with them?
Um, it made me look at police different for a while, but I was able to sit down with the local precinct, that precinct, my neighborhood, and have a conversation with them. And we exchange in dialogue to say, like, yo, this is not right. And yo, you come from Long Island, but it don't work like that here in Bed-Stuy. And if you have a conversation with somebody and don't come agitated already or come already thinking that you got to meet a quota system, you can actually talk to people and realize that yo, these people is not bad in this community. So through conversing with police, I think over time it changed. I realized that they doing a job, they're doing a service, but our tax-paying dollars is paying for police officers. So they also have to treat us with some type of respect, regardless what zip code we born in.
Can you talk a bit about that quota system you mentioned?
So the quota system is the system that police operate on, in which they have to meet a certain amount of arrests and summonses before the end of the month. So one eye-opening fact that I learned was that in Park Slope, Brooklyn, there's more people that ride bicycles than in Bed-Stuy. Price is around 6,000 bikers in Park Slope, Brooklyn, and it's like about 300 to 500 in Bed-Stuy. But there's more there's more summonses given for people in Bed-Stuy riding on the sidewalk than in Park Slope, which is impossible if you're thinking about if it's 6,000 bicycle riders in Park Slope. There's probably more people riding on the sidewalk than in Bed-Stuy, but it's about which neighborhood is being surveilled more by police. So if police are surveilling Bed-Stuy more, they're gonna give more summonses because they're over policed. But in Park Slope, where more people ride on the sidewalk, they're not giving as much summonses because they're not being over policed.
In what ways was being arrested a turning point for you?
Um, I don't think being arrested was a turning point for me. Um, I think I was just a victim of a system that was happening in my neighborhood. I think all the things I'm doing right now, all the work that I'm doing, me being a student at Columbia, I think I had this inside me before I was ever arrested. I think I expressed it before, but I think, you know, before I cut my hair, I got a haircut now, but I had dreadlocks. I got a lot of tattoos. I think the way that they see me and perceive me, they perceive me as a threat, even if I'm not. So I think I was just being me, just living my daily life as a black man. I was victim to it.
Now you mentioned you're a student at Columbia and you also work with the Center of Justice. Can you talk a little bit about those experiences?
Um, yeah, I work for the Center for Justice, which is an on campus based organization that aims to end mass incarceration. I'm also a student. I'm in my just finished my sophomore year here at Columbia School of General Studies. Uh, Me being a student, it definitely gave me a different lens to see the world. But one thing that's disheartening to me is that why did I have to come to this global institution to get this information? There's a lot of things I learned in class, as even me being a minor in African American studies. I'm learning this, but why I didn't learn this in high school? Why I didn't learn this in middle school? And I think if I learned it earlier, it would have definitely helped me navigate to where I'm at now faster, or be able to help my friends with it faster. I think I ordered a class before I was a student called Children at Risk, where I was able to learn the Bronfenbrenner model. I was able to learn about Robert K. Merton's strain theory, and all these concepts and terminology that I learned here. I was able to make it more digestible and teach it to my community, so they perspective and lens they see the work of change. But why was it only me accessing this space? Was I being taught this? And that was kind of an eye opener to me. Like, wow, the educational system is flawed, and in certain neighborhoods is inadequate. how can I, be the solution to that?
Do you think withholding that kind of information is it's intentional?
Uh, yes, I think it's intentional. Um, Based on the level of education, I think in private school they learn more than people in public school, and I think now with uh, gentrification happening in neighborhoods that formerly have been black and brown, there's a lot of stuff that's changing in the community, right? Uh, I asked my little brother who's in second grade. I asked him, "Do you know what slavery is?" And he said, "I know what slavery is, but I only know what slavery is because I saw it on YouTube." And he did, and during Black History Month, he was learning about Michael Jordan and Oprah Winfrey instead of Sojourner Truth and Harriet Tubman. So things that I learned when I was in his grade is being taken out of school because they're saying that people who moved into the neighborhood, they don't want them to feel they don't want them to feel the certain things because of their ancestors, which I think is wrong because you're also erasing history for a bunch of people who've been in this neighborhood for, decades, centuries.
Do you think that's part of the reason why, even though we're in a more progressive era, we're still struggling with similar issues?
Yeah, I think one of the things that I learned here at Columbia, right, it's called something called the plantation logic. So a lot of things that happen in slavery, like the surveillance of black people, segregation and marginalization of people, this came from slavery, and now it's just happening in different forms. Like the 13th Amendment, you could be a slave if you're incarcerated, right? So you're getting exploited for labor, getting paid pennies on the dollar, and these is things that's happening currently, and to a lot of people it don't look like it, but it's slavery in another form. So I think I didn't know that before coming to Columbia, being able to see that. So I think they withheld this information on purpose so people can't ask questions. And questions is the things that help you reflect on yourself in order to be like, okay, what I want to be. Before this, I didn't know exactly what I want to be. I didn't have no track or no trajectory. My father was murdered, my sister was murdered. I felt like I was going to fall victim and be a statistic of my neighborhood. But then when I started to get access to opportunities and meeting different people, I started to ask myself some valuable questions that helped me get to where I'm at. Okay, what does it look like for Jason to be successful? What do I want to do? Oh, I enjoy facilitating. I enjoy presenting. Oh, why don't I be a professor? Why don't I create my own curriculum to teach people? And I didn't have that until I was able to get access to different things and see different.
Are you still in contact with people that haven't been able to make that breakthrough?
Yeah, I'm still in contact with people. I live uptown now. I live in Morningside Heights, but I go to Brooklyn frequently, every other weekend. Sometimes I do work in Brooklyn, so I facilitate different programs with different CBOs, which is community-based organizations. And I go to Brooklyn. I teach the youth that I was the youth 2, 3 years ago. I used to tell them like I was in your shoes 2 years ago. They didn't know what I was going to do. Didn't have no track. Didn't have no ID. Didn't have no plan. But through these steps, I was able to become this. So I'm trying to build a bridge from the community straight to institutions like Columbia so that we could find that our potential is tailored to other things besides the streets.
How have you been able to work through all the trauma that you've gone through?
So Inside Circle was a big help. So it's like a group therapy session, but so I go to a lot of different circles with men, women, and I do that frequently. I also found better ways to cope with the emotions that I have. I found out that journaling is great for me. I journal all the time, every day, whether it's plans, ideas, whether I just need to write down about my day. Um, I also became a heavy reader, realized that reading, distract me and help me escape from certain things. It calms me. So I came up with different tactics in order to deal with emotions. Uh, and I asked for help way more. I think we overlook the process of people being scared of rejection. being rejection sensitive, and they don't ask people for help because they scared someone might say no. So now, if I do need help, I ask people.
What are your plans now after college?
After college, I will be applying for a PhD program in psychology, and I got a couple ideas and things I want to write about for my dissertation, and I want to make that happen. I want to be a published author, and I want to be a professor. And then anything on the side I could do with community advocacy, I want to help.
What are some things that you choose to write about?
So I want to write about the mindset in which people born in unprivileged neighborhoods have, and how can we create solutions in order to change their mindset and prevent them from abandoning their dreams that they have. In order to be successful, right, everybody has basic needs. Everybody wants acceptance and status. Everybody see this idea of the American dream, but some people it's harder to reach than others, right? So someone coming from an affluent community, they have all the opportunity, they have the resources, they have their parents that can help them achieve the thing that they want to achieve, they dream. But then there's other people who may not have that much support, may not have that much help, and step outside to a reality in which people can't understand, right? There's substance misuses inside the hallway, high. There's pissy elevators, excuse my French, right? But they deal with all these things and they still have to show up for school. Like they don't have enough food in the house, and the only time they can eat is when they at school. Like they have all these obstacles and they still gotta chase this far-fetched dream. So eventually people be like, nah, like they give up on it. And then there's on top of that, there's a whole bunch of projected failures on them. Like you can't do this because I didn't do it, or you can't do this because no one from this community never did that. And they have to deal with that and still try to attain this dream. So a lot of people fall victim and they just be like, they right, I can't do that. And I feel like I was 1 inch away from that. But me just persevering and just believing in higher power that I said, through God, I could do anything. And I kept going. And I'm a testimony to that anything is possible. I don't know I don't know too many people who went to college, let alone an Ivy League institution. So
Have you had to deal with that back home? Like when you go back, do you face like kind of that condescension in a way?
yeah. So I always tell people that for me, knowledge was a double-edged sword. Now that I know all these things, I can't be naive to a bunch of the stuff that's happened in my community. So when I go back, yeah, it's cool to see the people I grew up with. It's cool to see family, but I also see the things that I didn't see while I was living. I also see how poverty affect people. I also see how drugs affect people, how alcohol affect people. I see how my friends are becoming the people that we used to talk about, probably becoming victims to alcohol. And I see a bunch of young kids abandoning their dreams from a young age, believing that they can't achieve it. And I only could help so much people. I try to help, but then that could become a burden on myself. Like realizing that I gotta, keep up with my grades and the things I do for work, and also try to inspire and help so many people at the same time. It's been heavy, but I've been working on that in therapy. How can I like satisfy myself, but then also you know maintain the bridge that I'm trying to build for my community to higher education.
And if there's one thing that people take away from today's episode, what should it be?
Um, if it's one thing I want y'all to take from this episode, I want y'all to look at me and know that my life is not an anomaly. Like I'm not a person, a one of a generation type person. I'm I'm what happens when you give anyone resources. So if you could help anyone, help them. And to always be comfortable with taking steps in the dark, even if you don't know where it's going to lead. Something that you always wanted to do, just take a shot at it. You never know what you could become.
Thank you all for listening. I hope you got something out of it, even if it's just an interest in mass incarceration. Stay tuned for the next episode, and as always, stay hopeful out there.